In the ruins of the cathedral, something ancient stirred and chose her. The storm had followed her all the way to the edge of the valley. Seraphine pulled her cloak tighter against the rain, but the wind ripped through fabric and bone alike. The sky above split again with lightning, revealing the jagged silhouette of the old cathedral. Its spires were broken, its roof half collapsed, yet even in ruin it loomed like something still alive, watching, waiting. She should have turned back. The villagers whispered that the cathedral was cursed, that no soul who sought shelter there ever left unchanged. But Seraphine's lungs burned from running, and the shouts of the men who had chased her still echoed faintly in the hills. Branded witch, cursed child, whatever name they spat at her, she had learned one thing: it was safer among shadows than among men. Her boots struck the uneven stone of the cathedral steps, slick with moss. The great wooden doors sagged open as if they had been waiting centuries for her hand. She slipped inside. The silence hit her first. Not the ordinary hush of an abandoned place, but a weighted stillness that pressed against her chest. The air smelled of old incense and rain-soaked stone. She raised her lantern, its trembling flame pushing back the dark in narrow circles. Each lightning flash through the broken roof hurled color across the floor, fractured by shards of stained glass. Between those bursts, her small light revealed only shadows stretching high and endless. And everywhere, perched along the arches, the gargoyles stared. Seraphine had seen gargoyles before, carvings clinging to rooftops, their jaws frozen in grotesque snarls. But here, in the cathedral's hollowed heart, they felt different. Dozens lined the walls, crouched and waiting, wings outstretched in eternal vigilance. She shivered under their gaze. Her steps echoed as she moved down the central aisle. Somewhere above, water dripped steadily, a rhythm like a heartbeat. She meant only to hide, to wait until the danger outside passed. Yet her eyes kept drifting upward, scanning the statues. One in particular drew her. It crouched above the altar, wings spread wide as though it might leap. Unlike the others, its stone looked darker, almost black. Each lightning flash caught on its horns and fangs, but even between them, she thought she saw it, a faint, ember-like glow beneath its chest. Her breath caught. She told herself it was only her lantern, only her fear. But something in her chest pulled her closer, a thread she could not name. She climbed the altar steps, each one trembling beneath her soaked boots, until she stood directly below it. The gargoyle's face was terrible, fangs bared, horns curling back along its head, hair carved to look like wind-blown locks. Yet beneath the menace there was something else. The sculptor's hand had carved sorrow into the set of its mouth, anguish into the furrow of its brow. Without thinking, Seraphine raised her hand. Her fingers brushed the stone. It was warm. She staggered back with a cry, nearly slipping. Stone was never warm, not in a ruin long abandoned to rain and cold, and yet beneath her palm that impossible warmth lingered, like the last heartbeat of something buried alive. The cathedral groaned. Cracks spread along the gargoyle's chest with a grinding sound, faint lines glowing like molten fire beneath the stone. Dust rained from its wings as they flexed, slow, deliberate, as if shaking off centuries. Seraphine stumbled down the steps, her cloak tangling around her legs. "No," she whispered, though she had no idea who she was pleading with. The gargoyle moved. Stone shattered and fell in slabs, revealing flesh that still looked carved from granite, yet rippled with life. His wings stretched wide, blotting out the lightning for an instant, every joint creaking like trees in a storm. His eyes flared open, burning with ember-red light. He looked at her. Not past her, not through her, but directly at her, as though he had been waiting all this time for her alone. When he spoke, his voice was rough, layered like rocks grinding together, yet threaded with something deep and human. Seraphine. Her knees nearly gave out. How do you know my name?" The gargoyle descended from the altar, each step shaking the ground. He towered over her, a figure half shadow, half firelight, monstrous and magnificent. His gaze burned as he lowered his head, wings curling slightly around them both. "Because," he rumbled, "it was carved into me the day I was bound. You are the one I was meant to wait for." The lantern flame quivered in Seraphine's hand, but it was his eyes that truly lit the cathedral. Burning, unblinking, they held her as firmly as his massive talons might have. She tried to step back, but the altar's steps caught at her heels. The storm roared outside, thunder chasing through the valley, yet within these walls all she heard was the grinding of stone and the steady drum of her own heartbeat. "You're not real," she whispered, though her voice shook. "You're a guardian," he said, his tone deep enough to vibrate the ruined walls. His head tilted, the long sweep of his black hair brushing against his stone-textured shoulders. "Or I was once." His wings shifted, shedding dust. When he moved, it was not the stiffness of stone, but the fluid strength of something alive. He lowered himself to one knee, the cathedral trembling as if it recognized his presence again. Seraphine swallowed. Her lantern wavered. "Guardians are stories." "Stories are only truths with the edges dulled," he answered. He reached across his chest, where glowing cracks still traced lines of fire beneath the stone. "This place remembers. I was carved to defend it, to defend all who entered its doors. But time broke the vow, and without a keeper." His words roughened, almost breaking into a growl. The glow along his chest brightened, pulsing like a wound that had never healed. "Without a keeper, the guardian becomes the beast." Seraphine gripped her lantern tighter. "Keeper? What does that mean?" His ember gaze softened, not in color, but in weight, as if he pitied her even while binding her in his truth. "The one whose presence tethers me to humanity, the one who steadies the fire before it burns through the flesh. Without you, I fall." Her throat tightened. "And if a keeper fails?" For a moment something flickered across his face, grief so sharp it looked like a crack splitting deeper into his chest. His claws curled against the stone floor. "Then the fire consumes everything," he said at last, voice low and jagged. "It has happened before." His ember gaze softened, not in color, but in weight, as if he pitied her even while binding her in his truth. "The one whose presence tethers me to humanity, the one who steadies the fire before it burns through the flesh. Without you, I fall." The thunder rolled again, but now the storm began to falter. Through the ragged holes in the cathedral's roof, clouds broke apart. A spill of moonlight pierced through, casting pale silver across the altar steps. It touched Seraphine's hair, turning the damp strands into a crown of white fire. The gargoyle inhaled sharply, as though the sight struck deeper than his stone flesh could bear. "It is as the prophecy carved," he said hoarsely. "The storm breaks, and the keeper's light is revealed." Seraphine shook her head, retreating another step. No, you're mistaken. I'm no one. Just a girl the village fears. They call me cursed." "That is why you are here." His wings unfurled fully now, their shadows spreading across the floor like a dark canopy. "Cursed to them, chosen to me." Her throat tightened. His words pressed against all the hollow places inside her, places carved by years of rejection, whispers, stones thrown when no one thought she watched. She had always felt she did not belong. And now, in the silence of a cathedral broken but not dead, a monster claimed that very fracture as destiny. "I can't," she whispered. "You already have." She flinched at the certainty in his tone. "How?" Bastian, though she did not yet know his name, lifted a hand the size of her entire shoulder. Instead of grasping, he placed it gently against the cracked stones of the altar, tracing old carvings. Runes glowed faintly where his claws passed, as if awakened by his touch. "When you spoke to me," he said, voice low, "when you called me real, you fed the ember that keeps me bound. It is not choice, Seraphine. It is bond." Her heart pounded. She wanted to deny it, to run, but the cathedral itself seemed to lean in, listening for her answer. The moonlight shifted across the floor until it bathed only the two of them. And she realized with a shuddering breath that he was right. Part of her had always been waiting for something she could never name. Yet waiting and accepting were not the same. "I don't know what you are," she said finally, "but I will not be caged by prophecy." His ember eyes flared brighter, not in anger, but something far more dangerous: devotion. "Then I will not cage you," he promised, bowing his massive head. "But know this, Keeper, if you turn from me, I will fall. And when I fall, all around me will burn." The storm passed in the hours that followed, but Seraphine did not leave. At first, she told herself it was fear, that stepping outside would mean torches, accusations, hunters waiting to drag her back. But as dawn bled pale through the shattered windows, she knew it was not fear alone that bound her to the cathedral. It was him, Bastian. He had spoken the name only once, almost reluctantly, as if unsure he still deserved to carry it after centuries half-bound in stone. When the first light touched him, he retreated into the shadows of the arch, wings folded tight against his back. His body, sculpted like granite, seemed to drink the gloom as if daylight itself pained him. Seraphine sat on the cracked steps, her lantern dark, hands folded in her lap. She studied him carefully, waiting for him to move, to explain, to vanish back into stillness. Instead, he watched her. Not as a predator studies prey, but as one dying of thirst watches water, afraid it will disappear before the first sip. "You should go," he said at last. His voice was quieter now, though it still rolled like stone underfoot. "Every moment you linger, you tie yourself more tightly to me." Seraphine lifted her chin. "And if I go, you burn." His jaw tightened. "Yes, then I'll stay." The words startled her as much as him. They had risen from her lips without permission, born of instinct rather than reason. Yet once spoken, she could not call them back. For a long while he said nothing. Then, with a carefulness that seemed impossible in so vast a frame, he crossed the nave and lowered himself to sit opposite her. The floor groaned beneath his weight, dust rising like incense. Seraphine's pulse raced as his shadow spilled across her. He was monstrous, yes, horns, wings, claws, but up close she saw the sorrow cut deeper than the menace. Cracks ran across his chest like scars, faint glimmers of ember light showing through. His face, carved sharp and severe, softened whenever his gaze met hers. "Tell me," she said at last, unable to bear the silence. "What is it you guard? There's nothing here but ruin." Seraphine's pulse raced as his shadow spilled across her. He was monstrous, yes, horns, wings, claws, but up close she saw the sorrow cut deeper than the menace. Cracks ran across his chest like scars, faint glimmers of ember light showing through. His face, carved sharp and severe, softened whenever his gaze met hers. "Tell me," she said at last, unable to bear the silence. "What is it you guard? There's nothing here but ruin." His eyes lowered. This place was not always hollow. It held vows once, prayers, a covenant between flesh and stone. His voice faltered, roughening. "I was bound to protect it, and all who sought sanctuary within. But when vows are broken—" He hesitated, his jaw tightening as if against memory. "The guardian pays the price." Seraphine's breath caught. "You mean—" "Not tonight," he interrupted sharply, wings shifting with sudden unease. Then softer, almost broken. "Another time." Later, when her palm pressed against his chest and she felt the slow, impossible heartbeat beneath stone-like skin, he rasped her name. "Seraphine," he said, and for an instant she heard something beneath the warning, an echo of fear, not fear of her, but fear for her. Fear of losing again what he once had, long ago. This place was not always hollow. It held vows once, prayers, a covenant between flesh and stone. His voice faltered, roughening. I was bound to protect it and all who sought sanctuary within. But when they turned on one another, when faith turned to fire and war, the vow fractured, and so did I. Seraphine's breath caught. You were betrayed. Forgotten. He looked up then, and the raw ache in his ember eyes stilled her tongue. Forgotten until you. She had no answer for that, none that could untangle the knot in her chest. So she stayed. Days blurred into nights, each one cloaked in secrecy. She ventured out at times, gathering food, listening to the village's whispers. They spoke of strange lights in the ruins, of shadows moving where none should. Fear was rising, but Seraphine returned always to the cathedral, and to him. Bastion never strayed beyond its crumbling walls, though she could see in the restless flare of his wings how badly he longed to stretch them against the sky. Instead, he showed her the cathedral's forgotten beauty, the constellations carved into its vaulted ceiling, the mosaics shattered but still shimmering faintly under moonlight. He spoke of the old vows in a voice that grew steadier with every telling, as if her presence lent him strength. One night, when the wind slipped cold through the broken arches, she shivered despite her cloak. Before she could shift closer to the meager fire she had lit, his wings shifted. With a low, almost hesitant sound, Bastion unfurled them around her, creating a canopy of stone-dark flesh. The warmth surprised her. She had expected them to be cold as the walls, but they held the heat of life, steady and strong. She looked up, finding his face shadowed above her. His gaze burned down, unblinking. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to nothing but the sound of rain dripping, the press of his wing sheltering her, and the impossible sense of safety she felt within it. Her hand rose before she thought better of it. She pressed her palm against his chest, against the cracks that glowed faintly with ember fire. Bastion inhaled sharply. His body went rigid, every muscle coiled. Seraphine, he rasped, her name torn between warning and plea. She felt it then, the heartbeat, slow, deep, reverberating beneath stone-like skin. It should not have been possible, and yet there it was, undeniable, living. She swallowed hard. You're no beast. His head lowered until his breath stirred her hair. No, he murmured, voice rough as grinding stone. But I will be, if you let go. Whispers spread faster than fire. Seraphine heard them in the village square on one of her rare ventures for bread. Strange lights in the cathedral, the blacksmith muttered. Shadows moving where none should. Others crossed themselves, voices low. The cursed girl wanders there at night. She stirs something best left buried. Torches were being gathered. Hunters spoke of purging the ruin before its evil spread. Seraphine's pulse thundered in her ears as she fled back to the cathedral. Her hands shook as she pushed open the sagging doors. Bastion was waiting. The fire in his chest cracks burned brighter than she had ever seen, glowing like molten veins beneath stone. His wings shifted restlessly, scraping the arches above. When his eyes found her, they burned with a hunger that was not for flesh, but for something deeper, something clawing to break free. They are coming, she whispered, with fire, with iron. I know. His voice was low, ragged. I can smell their fear even now. His claws dug into the floor, gouging stone. And I cannot hold myself much longer, Seraphine. The fire grows. Her throat closed. Tell me the truth. He froze. You've spoken of keepers, of vows broken. She stepped closer, refusing to flinch, though his power rippled around her. What happened before? Why do you fear me as much as you need me? His head bowed, wings curling tight, as if her words struck deeper than any weapon. For a long moment, he said nothing. Only the glow of his chest cracked the dark, rising and falling with each heavy breath. Then his voice came, hoarse, broken. There was another. The words were like ash falling. In the time of the cathedral's glory, I was not alone. A keeper was chosen for me. She was kind at first, devoted. Her vow steadied the fire within me, gave me strength to guard the sanctuary. For a time, I believed it would last forever. His ember eyes flicked to hers, raw with pain. But fear is a poison, Seraphine. The villagers whispered she was bewitched, that no woman could truly love a monster. She let those whispers take root, and one night she broke the vow. The cathedral seemed to groan with the memory, dust sifting from the rafters. "What happened?" Seraphine asked, though her heart already knew. His jaw tightened. Without her anchor, the fire consumed me. I raged. I burned everything, friend, foe, the innocent who sought sanctuary. I became the very beast they feared. To stop me, the order bound me in stone, to wait until another keeper came. Centuries passed, and I remained, half alive, half dead, cursed to remember. Seraphine's eyes stung with tears she did not expect. He had not just been waiting. He had been suffering, alone with the weight of betrayal, with only stone to cradle his sorrow. "No wonder you—" her voice faltered. "No wonder you don't trust me." His gaze locked on her, burning. "I trust you more than I should. That is what terrifies me. If you betray me as she did, the fire will not be stopped a second time. The valley will drown in wrath." Outside, shouts rose, the distant glow of torches bleeding into the night sky. The hunters were coming. Seraphine's heart pounded as she looked at him, at the cracks glowing brighter with each breath, at the wings trembling to unfurl, at the grief carved deeper into him than stone. She could run, as the first keeper had. She could save herself. But her voice came steady, though her body shook. "Then let me prove I'm not her." The night burned orange with torchlight. Through the broken roof of the cathedral, Seraphine saw flames bobbing closer, dozens of them, each one carried by men shouting her name, shouting curses. The sound of iron on stone rang like a death toll. "They come," Bastian growled. His wings spread wide, scraping sparks from the walls. The glow of his chest fissures pulsed violently, as though the fire inside clawed to escape. "And I will not hold it back this time." "Bastian," she began, but he was already moving. The doors shuddered, then burst inward as hunters poured through. They froze for only a breath at the sight of him, towering, monstrous, wings blotting out the altar. Then rage carried them forward. "Monster! Abomination! Burn it out!" Iron spears flashed in the firelight. Bastian roared. The sound shook the rafters, knocked dust and shattered glass from the heights. His wings crashed outward, hurling men across the nave. Fire spilled from his chest cracks in a halo of red, his eyes twin embers burning hot. For an instant, he was no guardian, no man, only the beast he had sworn he would become without her. Seraphine's lantern toppled, its flame snuffed by the chaos. In the darkness, only his glow remained, blinding, terrible. She saw it happening, the prophecy he had confessed, the fire consuming him, the beast unfurling. And if it did, the valley would not survive. "Bastian!" she screamed, but he did not hear her, lost in the storm of fury. His claws tore through pillars, wings split stone. Hunters scrambled screaming before him. Her body moved before her mind could catch it. She climbed the altar steps, forcing her way into the blaze of his wrath. Heat scorched her skin. Her heart pounded like a drum of war. She reached him, laid her hand over his chest, against the cracks burning through stone and flesh. "Look at me," she cried. "I am not her." For a moment, he did not hear. The fire fought, snarling for release. But slowly, painfully, his eyes shifted. From beast's fury to ember-red, trembling, human sorrow. Seraphine's throat burned as she spoke the words she had read in the runes, the vow whispered into her dreams. "I am keeper. My heart steadies your fire. My hand binds your wrath. As long as I remain, you are not lost. The cathedral itself seemed to breathe. The flames crackling along his chest dimmed, not extinguished, but steadied, like a forge banked to heat instead of destroy. His wings folded, curving protectively around her, shielding her from the hunter's glares. Bastian fell to one knee, his massive hand braced against the floor. His head bowed, trembling not from weakness, but from the sudden unbearable weight lifted. You, his voice broke. You stayed. Her hand pressed harder against him, tears streaking her face. Always. The hunters, who had once stormed with fury, now stood paralyzed. Before them was still a monster, horns, wings, claws. But that monster shielded the woman they had condemned. His arms enclosed her like a fortress, his gaze unbroken from hers. None dared step forward. One by one, torches lowered. Fear rippled through them, not of his rage, but of the bond they had just witnessed, something older and stronger than any curse they had been told. At last, the first hunter dropped his spear. The others followed, retreating step by step until only their fear lingered in the smoke-filled air. The cathedral fell silent again. The hunters' footsteps faded into the night, their torches swallowed by darkness. The silence they left behind was almost holy, as if the cathedral itself exhaled for the first time in centuries. Seraphine remained where she was, hand pressed firmly over the glowing cracks of Bastian's chest. His wings still curled around her, a fortress of living stone. Slowly, he lifted his head. The fury had not vanished. Embers still burned beneath his skin. His horns caught the pale light. His claws dug furrows into the altar steps. But his eyes, once wild, now fixed on her with something steady, reverent, undone. You spoke the vow, he said, voice hoarse, as though each word carried centuries of weight. She nodded, her breath trembling. I meant it. His great body shook, not from weakness, but from the sudden release of a burden he had carried alone too long. He closed his hand over hers, careful, so careful, though his fingers were larger than her entire arm. Heat thrummed through the cracks in his skin, no longer violent fire but a steady forge. For so long, he whispered, I believed no one would stay. Seraphine swallowed, her tears hot against the cold night air. Then believe me now. I'm not her. I will never be her. At that, his expression shifted. Grief still lingered, carved deep into him, but something new bloomed there, hope, fragile but alive. He bowed his head until his brow nearly touched hers, stone against skin, warm despite its weight. Outside, the storm had finally cleared. The moon spread silver across the broken roof, spilling light over them both. The ruins no longer seemed abandoned, but sanctified again, not by priests or prayers, but by the vow between them. Seraphine let out a shaky laugh, surprising herself. They'll never understand. They are not meant to. His voice deepened, wings flexing wide before folding tight against his back. They will call me monster until their last breath. But to you... He paused, the ember glow of his chest pulsing steady beneath her hand. To you, I will only ever be yours. The words struck her harder than any curse or blessing she had ever known. Her heart answered before her lips could, surging with a certainty she had never felt. She leaned into him, pressing her forehead against the rough line of his jaw. I already am, she whispered. His wings unfurled, enclosing her fully. The weight of them was immense, yet she felt no fear, only shelter, only belonging. And in that moment, Seraphine understood. The cathedral was no longer ruin. It was alive again, because its guardian was no longer alone. The valley would whisper, the villagers would fear. They might return with fire and steel another night. But none of it mattered, for she was keeper, and he was gargoyle, bound not by curse, but by choice. Together, They stepped from the altar, their shadows stretching side by side across the fractured floor. The moonlight caught on his wings, turning the jagged edges into silver. Her hand rested easily in his, small against his stone-textured palm, but unwavering. Whatever came, they would face it not as outcast and monster, but as vow and vow-keeper. And in the silence of the cathedral, where prayers had once echoed, a new covenant was written, not in stone, not in scripture, but in love that no fire could consume. If you like this story, please like, share, and subscribe. It helps this channel grow. Thanks for watching.